Hey guys, so Lord here, back again with another review, and today we'll be taking a look at the NECA Toys American Werewolf in London Ultimate Kessler Wolf. Now before we get into it, let us first take a look-see at both the front and the back of the packaging. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now before we get into the meat and taters of this review, the Kessler Wolf does come with two interchangeable head sculpts. The first of which is the snarling head sculpt, which he comes packaged with. The second of which is this open mouth roaring or howling head sculpt, and it should be worth noting that the eyes on mine are a little bit off, but that's not all that bad since he is a rabid werewolf after all, and he's probably too pissed off and mad about it to really care about what he's looking at the current time. So with that being said, let's now move on and take a look at the aesthetics and articulation. Taking a closer look at our big bad Kessler Wolf here, and he is a big old chunky boy. Maybe not so much chunky, but he is a big boy nonetheless. I mean, just giving you a quick 360 of this thing, you can get an idea of just how massive this figure really is. Like, if I stretch this thing out, I'm willing to bet he would be approximately a foot. I'm willing to bet. But at any rate, that aside, I absolutely freaking love this figure. Probably one of my favorite NECA figures of all time, King Kong and Goliath included, because I really like both of those. And probably one of my favorite figures of last year. Didn't get this guy last year, never saw him in the store. Still never saw him in the store. We mostly saw that demon Nazi nightmare character that shows up, midway through the movie. And for those of you who are about to go in the comments and start talking shit, your boy's actually seen this movie not once, not twice, but 3 freaking times. So, ha! In your face. Granted, 2 of those times were in passing, but at any rate, at least I have actually seen this movie, which is more than I can say for a lot of movies that I have NECA figures of, like Predator or Ash from Evil Dead 2 or Jason from Friday the 13th. Can't say I've seen those movies. Can't say I have, but I have seen It. I have seen Nightmare on Elm Street, the first 3. And the Universal Monster stuff, but I don't really have a bunch of those to talk about. I did see the original King Kong, too, since we talked about King Kong a second ago. But at any rate, I love this figure. He's large and in charge and taking up as much camera space as he possibly can. Getting up close and personal here. He's got really cool looking sculpt on the face there. Really movie accurate. And the eyes don't seem as wonky on this one as they do on the open mouth head. He does have this main piece, which I like to shove up against his torso. That's probably not how it's supposed to be, but it stays out of the way and doesn't get on my nerves that way. His midsection's a little weird. This is all kind of like raised up and it was pinched. I don't think it's as pinched anymore. Well, this side is like all flattened out. So I don't know if that's just on mine or if that's how it is. I'm starting to think that's how it is because it feels like this is how this is supposed to be. But just something to note there, and you can probably see it better this way. See that little ridge there. But he's got some nice shading throughout. Got some paint on the claws there. And this is a figure you can't really stand up, for lack of a better term, anthropomorphically. We're going to go with furry terms here. I know some of you aren't crazy about that stuff, but hey, it's vocabulary that works. But at the end of the day, I don't need a ton of werewolves on 2 legs. I have the creature replica ones for that. And those are good enough. And unfortunately, I don't actually have those out to compare this guy to. But I can tell you right now, they're taller because they stand on 2 legs. But this guy is either on the same playing field if he was standing upright, or is a little bit bigger. He feels a little bigger to me, but that's what she said. Doesn't have a lot of tail game going on. He just has this little nubbin. But really good prosthetic work on this movie. Really, really good. Like for what? Early 80s? That's some hardcore freaking nightmare fuel there. And I gotta tell you, this movie, it's not really a horror movie so much as it is kind of a mix of horror and comedy. Because literally, what is it? Kessler's friend, best friend, I think his name is John, comes back from the dead as a spirit, but his spirit looks more and more gross and decayed the further into the movie you get. And that's kind of funny. And then later on in the movie, you see all the victims of Kessler after he's changed into the werewolf and gone on a killing spree. You see all the victims come back as ghosts, and they're literally trying to help the dude kill himself. It's morbid humor, but it's humor nonetheless, and I love that about this movie. So, kudos to people who worked on American Werewolf in London for that. A little bit disappointed that Warren Zevon didn't make a cameo, and that song wasn't in the movie. But, hey, can't have your cake and eat it, I guess. But as far as articulation on this guy goes, he's got a lot of range in the head there. He's got double ball pig at the base of the skull, and then at the base of the neck. A little bit hindered because of this fur mane thing, which will probably just work itself out. But you can turn it, you can rotate it, you can look up and down, you can do all kinds of stuff with that. These shoulders, if you want to call them shoulders, go out to the side, they go back down, they move forward and back. He's got a swivel at the elbow, single hinge at the elbow. He's got a hinge at the quote-unquote wrist here, and a little bit of rotation. Then he does have a toe hinge. And you can kind of see his thumb there, and then these are his 4 fingers. If you go and straighten this out all the way, kind of make a hand out of that. So that's pretty cool. I gotta tell you, even though this guy is kind of pre-posed in this quadrupedal state, I could still get some really good crouching poses out of him. Like this, I would consider closer to a gargoyle pose than anything. His midsection, you got a nice double ball peg up in there. And you can rotate it, you can shift it side to side, you can crunch it up and down. Works really well. Really well. Again, be careful with this. It might get pinched on yours. It was on mine. Then he has ball hinge hips, or just like ball jointed hips. He's got the big old ball in there. If yours are loose, you can always put some adhesive in there, but the rubber overlay, that's the word I'm looking for, kind of helps keep things tight, but not too tight. But you can move his legs in and out, forward and back. Just with that, I think he's got a bit of a quiver as far as the thigh swivel goes. He does have a tiny bit of swivel in there, but not a lot. You mostly get that down here at the knee, which I have to tell you, I had to heat these knees up, so be very, very careful when you first open this guy. You don't want to break the knees, but they're still kind of tight. They're a lot more movable than they were. Still tight, but definitely needed to heat those up. And then he does have a the same joint here at the secondary knee, or whatever you want to call that. Kind of see his toe there. And then this also will flatten out and bend back into place. But really solid figure, man. I absolutely love this guy. This is a no-brainer, one of my favorite again, NECA figures. All the stuff I mentioned before included in that. A little bit tricky to get to stand flat-footed here, but we can do it. There we go. But basically, if you have the Gargoyles Bronx, this is pretty much more of that. So I felt right at home with this guy. Nothing too foreign as far as, you know, articulation and whatnot goes. It's just a little bit tricky to get all of his paws lined up on the ground there, especially when this one wants to buckle a little bit. There we go. That's probably as good as it's going to get for now, folks. But at any rate, there. Setting him back there. Yeah, that's about as good as it's gonna get. He doesn't want to really cooperate right now. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe that's what it was. I can move that one forward a bit. Maybe this one bent. That's what it was. His elbow bent there. So my OCD's getting the best of me right now. And one of his feet's not on the ground. You know what? To hell with it. If he wants to be a diva wolf, then so be it. But side note, anyone else want to see a really badass Balto custom made out of this? Or is that just me? But at any rate, with that being said, let's now move on and take a closer look at some size comparisons. First up, here is the Kessler Wolf next to my other favorite quadruped from NECA Toys, the Disney Gargoyles Ultimate Bronx. Next up, here he is alongside another one of my favorite wolf figures I have in my collection at this current time, the G.I. Joe Classified Series Timber from the Snake Eyes and Timber Alpha Commandos 2-pack. And last, but certainly not least, we have our two regulars, the Mythic Legion's Brother Mandibulus 11th Spawn, who is towering over this guy, but I assure you, if I was able to straighten this guy out and stand him upright, good old Al Simmons here would be no match for the Kessler Wolf. So with that being said, time to wrap things up. Some final thoughts. Overall, and if, like me, you're a huge fan of werewolves, or even if you're a fan of the American Werewolf in London, there is no doubt in my mind that you 110% absolutely must pick this thing up. This figure is freaking fantastic, and I absolutely love this figure. This is quite possibly one of my favorite NECA / horror related figures of all time, even though I'm not too attached to this movie. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not one of my favorite movies of all time. But that being said, I did really enjoy the werewolf as far as aesthetics and prosthetics go, because for early 1980s, this is pretty much ahead of its time. I mean, just look at this thing. You wouldn't want to run into this thing in a dark alley, would you? If you do, you got bigger balls than the rest of us. So, with that being said, again, I would highly suggest you pick this thing up. It didn't really show up in stores around here, so I would advise getting it off of Big Bad Toy Store or Entertainment Earth, somewhere like that, because they seem to have them readily available. That, and if there's ever anything wrong with yours, you can always get some grade A customer service, which you guys know me, you know I appreciate very, very much. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you are so inclined, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know whenever I upload more reviews like this one. If you haven't already, please hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep the comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is. Especially when you're having nightmares about demon Nazis and the ghosts of your dead victims come back from the grave just to help you kill yourself. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.